This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
In case you haven't heard, Google and Facebook are facing some issues over their new privacy policies and terms of services. Now, here with me today is Krishna Rajagopal, the CEO of AKATI Consulting. So, Krishna, the Californians and New Yorkers are not happy about this. Why so?
Well, yes, and in fact, a lot of other netizens are also unhappy world over. But specifically, California and New York residents, they've actually filed two separate lawsuits against Google.
Okay.
Alleging that, the changes that they have made on their privacy policy violates users' privacy rights. And the thing is that they are seeking a class action status for the suit.
Wow.
Yeah, and in the Europe side, France Data Protection Authority, CNIL, is also upset with Google for serious violations of privacy.
Now, the EU is upset over Facebook, apparently. Why Facebook and why EU necessarily?
Yeah. See, Jeff, the European Commission is planning to basically stop the way Facebook is sort of eavesdropping on the users, right? To gather their information about their political opinions, their sexuality, their personal beliefs, religious beliefs, and even their whereabouts, right? Now, how Facebook does this is using a sophisticated software, and Facebook basically harvests this information from people's activity on that social networking site, and regardless of their privacy settings, right? Facebook will still take it and make it available to advertisers or someone pretending to be an advertiser.
Right, and there's also that conspiracy where they're working with the FBI and so forth.
Yes. So, the old Data Protection Act in EU was tabled in 1995. And this was before all these social networking sites were up. So what the EU did was come up with a draft EC directive. And they called it the New Draft European Data Protection Regulation. And under this regulation, it will ban such targeted advertising unless the user specifically allows it. Right? So what Facebook has done is basically reacted to this. This draft was published in January, and Facebook has reacted to this by updating its statement of rights and responsibilities. And this is basically a document that gives the relationship between the users and other parties that interact with Facebook. And Facebook has made some changes in that document, but the EU, especially data protection authorities in the EU and Germany, are not still happy.
Right, so we're gonna just one thing at a time. Google here.
Yeah.
What's the big issue over their new privacy settings or so?
All right. See, Jeff, Google has got about 60 different privacy policies in the past, right? One policy per application, right? And what they've done is they've basically merged everything into one simplified document. And just to make it clear that the users of these chocolate factory products and services are going to be uniformly tracked by the Mountain View Chocolate Factory. Now, the giant actually debuted their revised terms of services in March this year. And what they did was, you might be wondering, they actually did a tweaking of their policies to sort of support their activity of cross-pollinating, right? Activities and behavior across all the different applications using a single ID, which is the Google account. Now, you might be wondering, what does this mean, right? To an average user, let's just say I have just had a personal email with someone, and I'm using Gmail, for example, and I'm having a chat with that person, and the person is telling, you should check out, Britney Spears, the latest video, she looks hot. And the next second, when I move into YouTube, I see Britney Spears videos being published. Now, you can think at the back of your mind, this information is being sent to Google, it's being churned, and the recommendations are being passed through YouTube. Now, for an average person, the Chocolate Factory's combined privacy policy, the new combined privacy policy, right, has been criticized by security professionals and privacy professionals world over, right? Specifically in France and Germany, what they're saying is that, a lot of people are discussing about this, and what I've noticed is that the discussions are sort of general. right? I've not seen anyone discussing into the details. So what we're going to do is let me just try to get into the actual details, into the deep semantics of the policy itself. If we analyze Google's privacy policy, the new privacy policy, Google uses a lot of terms. Let me just read some of them to you, which I think are contradictory. It uses the terms information, personal information, personal data, non-personally identifiable information, personally identifiable information, sensitive personal information, and other information that identifies you. They use it interchangeably. Now, are these terms, for example, talking about the same thing? Question is, nobody knows.
All right, yeah.
Now, when the funny part is when one part of the policy offers protection for personal information, the other offers protection for personal data, and another part offers protection for personally identifiable information. And yet, there's another section that gives you protection for other information that identifies you. Again, are we referring to the same type of information? Nobody knows. Right? Now, that's not the only problem. Now, sometimes the policy uses a qualifier, right? And the qualifier here is log information and location information. Now, if you look at it, log information is the way you and I use Google's services, right? Like, for example, if you type Britney Spears, then that would be your log information. While location information is basically information about your actual location, right? Your whereabouts. Now, if you don't mind, Jeff, let's have a quick quiz. Now, can you tell me whether information about your location, is it non-personally identifiable information or personal information?
Well, that is quite tricky, isn't it? I think it would be a personal information because
Exactly.
where I would be at the moment, and it's a personal thing.
Yeah, so most people would go for that, right? Personal information. But guess what? Google has classified that as non-personally identifiable information in the new policy, right? Now, a lot of people are saying, probably listening and saying, I'm confused, man. Welcome aboard. There are millions of people out there under this new policy who do not know what this policy means in practice, right? I've even seen an article about this in the local newspaper, in Star, I think, where they actually defended this move by Google. Right? One of them even said the people who disagree with these new policies are those that have been disagreeing all along with Google's policies. Another one said, from a business perspective, it allows Google to understand their consumers' needs, and the onus is on the user not to share anything they wouldn't want. Now, the thing is that could have been the case in the past, but the new policy, you don't have a choice. Google does not give you a choice. Would you like to share this or not? That is not there. Another person even said he believes Google's new privacy policy is nothing to worry about. Right? I think we've been seriously misinformed.
So do we have to be worried now?
I think so.
It's the things that you've told me so far. It's more like spying then.
It is
So
legal.
are they legal spying?
Yeah, legal spying and making money out of your privacy. Yeah, and let me be frank. I mean, the CNIL, for example, or the EU, or the citizens of California and New York have better things to do than bicker about Google, right? So the fact that this is happening is because there is a serious issue, right? Unfortunately, nothing has been done in this part of the world. In Asia, for example, you've not heard any government body protesting against it, and that is sad. It's sad to see that an organization like that is actually making money at the expense of your privacy.
Right. Now, the thing is, you even mentioned that there's no option where we cannot say, no, I do not agree to this, or
Yes.
I would like to review this policy, I would subscribe to this and that. They just told us, like, this is what we're going to do, agree or disagree. If you disagree, you can't use it completely.
Exactly.
But we have to use Gmail and Google Maps and Google Docs and all that, right? We have to?
Well, I would disagree, because, you see, there are a lot of other alternatives out there, right? And, if you have to use Gmail, go ahead, fine. But what I'm saying is don't sell your soul to the chocolate factory, right? You might end up becoming a Oompa Loompa or something like that, And you don't have to use everything Google. So once you have everything Google, that's when the tracking and monitoring becomes perfect. And a lot of people might say that, come on, I'm just this dude sitting here. Why would
I'm
Google...
nobody, what would Google do to me?
Yeah, but when you realize that when there is some sensitive information, right, and it's being used against you, and that's when you probably realize, oh my God. Now, to make it a little bit more dramatic, let me just say, let's say our Prime Minister is using Gmail, for example, and maybe he decides to, browse or do some Google search, and some unspecified country decides to spy on him, right? What do? They go to Willy Wonka again, Google, and they try to pick up the user behavior, surfing details, right? Even email content, right? And this would be legal because you and I, as users, have already accepted a policy that says it's okay for them to do so. So in terms of a national leader, that could be a national disaster. That's quite sad.
Right, I'm speaking to Krishna Rajagopal, CEO of AKATI Consulting, about privacy policies that Google have just adjusted. And in just a moment, we'll talk about Facebook, BFM 89.9. Jeff Sandhu here, and I'm speaking to Krishna Rajagopal, the CEO of AKATI Consulting, on privacy policies and terms of use. Earlier on, we spoke about Google's new privacy policy.
Yep.
So what about the other giant, Facebook? Now, what's the issue there?
Well, quite similar to Google. Facebook users are also being monitored and tracked, right? See, all of Facebook's 800 million users, whether they realize it or not, agree to let the company use their personal information, right? When signing up, they approve a 4,000 word contract, right? Which licenses Facebook to use their data as they see fit.
Which I think none of us have read it.
Exactly. And if you want, if you're wondering, go back, log into Facebook. This contract can be viewed by clicking a link at the bottom of every page. There is a contract there. Now, the German authorities have basically criticized this change.
It's always the Germans.
Yeah, because, I think they have a very well-developed cyber law. In fact, they have one of the most restrictive cyber laws in the world, right? What the German authorities are saying is that Facebook is still ignoring European and German privacy laws. And the company is actually making the users responsible for the privacy issues rather than taking responsibility on themselves, right? And they're basically trying to say that, if you get into some privacy issues, it's your problem, not ours. All right? We just want to read your data.
Right.
That's the problem. And quite similar to Google's issue, if I say.
Now, the thing is, now Facebook, you it's a bit different because you can actually adjust how you want to manage your settings and so on. So what if, for example, I have limited my account, so I'm sort of practicing safe Facebooking.
Safe Facebooking.
Should I then be still worried?
Right. So by safe Facebooking, we mean no actual sharing of personal information.
Then that's no point in having a Facebook if you're not going to share anything.
When you say personal information, for example, you don't want to tell people where you live,
yes.
What car you drive. I'm actually here having teh tarik. You don't want to give that kind of personal information. If you have a party and after the party you decide to say it was a nice party, it's fine. People who've been to the party will know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the idea is, anything that you don't want the whole world to know, any embarrassing thing, right? Do not post it. Things like, I hate my wife, she always does this to me. Those kind of stuff, I think let's keep that to coffee chats with your friends. Leave it from Facebook. Because remember, in Facebook, someone is watching you, right? Regardless of your privacy settings. Facebook doesn't care about that. The privacy settings only apply to other Facebook users. Right? And remember, I think if you recall, a couple of months back, Facebook sort of introduced a new feature called suggested events.
Right.
Right? Where, they give you a bright idea on what they think you should be doing on a Friday night. Right? It's another freaky Facebook mind game, that reveals just how much this site knows about you and your life. That's because people actually share a lot of information. Right? So if you're wondering how do I actually, go one by one and restrict all this personal information, I think we did a interview some time back on personal digital privacy.
Yeah.
So you probably can download that podcast and go through that.
Right. Now, alternative to Facebook, the Salam World perhaps.
Why not? There are lots of alternatives. And for example, even if you talk about Google Docs, you've got Evernote. And that's pretty cool. Now, in terms of Facebook, Salam World seems promising, but with Salam World's rooting in Russia and Turkey, let's hope they don't become worse than Facebook. You know?
I'm speaking to Krishna Rajagopal, CEO of AKATI Consulting, about Google's and Facebook's privacy policies, and should we all be worried at all now? BFM 89.9.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.